folks, Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Here in the blog post we're going to share with you, we're going to feature a comparison here of two phones that I've liked, and one is the Samsung Galaxy S3, the other is the HTC One S. And we're going to compare these two head-to-head, give you some benchmarking, some other things so you can compare the two and see which one you prefer better. Now, the Samsung is brought to us by AT&T, and the HTC One S is brought to us by T-Mobile. Thank you both AT&T and T-Mobile for providing the phones for us to be able to review. Now, we won't be comparing the services between the two companies. We're not in that sort of versus comparison. We're just going to be comparing their phones. But it gives you an idea as to where you can pick up both. Of course, you can go to the AT&T.com website and look for their wireless products. You can go to t-mobile.com, and look at their phones. So let's go ahead and boot these up. We have these in boot mode so that you can take and be able to see how they boot up and the speed at which they boot up. We're not really testing the speed by which they launch, but to give you an idea at home, kind of an idea as to how they do come up. Let me make sure that we've hit all the buttons the right way here to get things to start working for us. So both these phones are really great phones. We reviewed each of them individually on the ChrisVossShow.com. We like both the phones. The phones operate very well. There's some core differences, of course, and they're released at different times originally, so that makes a difference too in the the life of a phone when it's been released, how new it is, all that good stuff. And of course, they're made by two different manufacturers, one by HTC and one by Samsung. So we're going to get a good idea as to the difference between the two of them here. Okay, now as you can see, the HTC has the HTC Ring Pull, of course, to pull it out of standby mode, and so you can either pull the ring or you can drag an icon into the ring to get it activated, and it's booting up still. And of course, with the Samsung S3, it kind of has this really cool swipe mechanism that you can take and do to pull it out of standby. It also has a number of other features where you can turn off that feature if you like, where you don't even have to deal with it. And so I really like the Samsung for that, because I haven't figured out how to turn the ring pull on the HTC. I'm not sure it's even possible, but both phones will work on a 3G and 4G network, so it's very cool that way. You can see there's obviously a difference in the screen, but let's talk about some of the differences in the phones themselves. Let's get into some of the specs and what they'll take and do. Now, the HTC One S had dimensions of 130.9 by 65 by 7.8 millimeters. Its weight is 119.5 grams. It's got a 4.3 Super AMOLED capacitive display, which is 540 by 960, runs on HT Sense 4.0 and Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich. Now, this particular One S that we're working with here has been updated to 4.03 Android Ice Cream Sandwich. So you'll be seeing that in your experience here. It's got a 1 gigabyte of RAM, 16 gigabytes built-in storage, dual-core 1.5 gigahertz Snapdragon processor. It's got an 8 megapixel rear camera and a 1.3 megapixel front camera, and it does have Beats Audio, like much of the HTC product line has, because it owns Beats Audio, or at least interest in Beats Audio. Now, with the Galaxy Samsung S3, what we're looking at is a 4.8 HD Super AMOLED display, 1280 by 720. It's got Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich that it will come with. This particular model we have upgraded to 4.04 Ice Cream Sandwich, and we really love it. In fact, as of this recording, we're seeing reports that there will likely be a Jelly Bean update to this Samsung product. So we're looking to that if those rumors are true, and evidently there's something that's been leaked. So that will be interesting to see. The dimensions are 5.38 by 2.78 by 3.4 inches. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 1.5 gigahertz dual-core CPU. Weight is 4.73 ounces. Has a 2 gigabytes of RAM, 16 gigs internal storage, and it has upgradable memory in it, up to 64 gigabytes upgradable through a micro SD card. It's got a 2100 milliamp battery, and let's see. It also has 4G LTE, of course, 8 megapixel camera, LED flash, 4x zoom, 1.9 megapixel front facing camera. So a little bit more when it comes to the front facing camera, most definitely there. Of course, a much bigger screen and some other features there. So let's get into some of the other details of the phones and how they take and work. Now, with each phone, there's some subtle differences. Of course, you can see here the size of the screen is definitely one of them. You can see here that the Galaxy S3 has a little bit taller screen. Okay, let's take and turn these babies sideways so that we can see how they measure up. You can see it has a little bit wider, well, I would say a much wider screen when it comes to the size and width of its screen. So definitely a whole lot more screen size with the Samsung Galaxy S3. My first impressions of the Galaxy S3 is it's a beautiful phone. It's a very large phone. When it comes to droppability with larger phones, at least for me in my clumsiness, the bigger it is, the little more likely it is that I'm going to drop it. So it's a very big phone, but it definitely holds more of a heft of size and width in your hands. But it does make it easier to grip sometimes, but sometimes it might be more droppable. Depends on how your hands are. My hands are pretty big, but I can see some with smaller hands definitely having a harder time with the phone. Other than that, it's light, thin, and easy and ergonomically built to fit in your hand really nice. I like the phone. It's a great phone. It does replace my iPad in some cases where I used to take my iPad places with me, and found that this actually resolves some of those issues. I actually did look at getting a Nexus 7 and decided that this is the closest thing I could probably have to that, and it would serve the same purpose. With the T-Mobile, I really like the body on it. The body on it is a steel body on the front, which is more stronger and better looking than the plastic version of the HTC One X. So I like the One S better. It's got a nice build to it, very solid build. I like the feel of it and everything. It's got a great protection for the camera on it. I really like the build on it. Now, I like how thin it is. It's a nice thin phone that has all the same bells, toys, and whistles that I like to have in my Android phone, but it's nice and thin. I really like the thin aspect of it. It fits better in my hand. I can grip it better. Does it have a bigger screen? Not as much as the S3, but it's definitely adequate. So I like both phones out of the box and been very impressed with both of them. Okay, so let's take a look in comparison. The phones almost seem to be about the same thickness when you really look at them flat out. We've got a charger button or plug-in here with the Samsung Galaxy S3. We have a small microphone hole, and on the T-Mobile we just have a small microphone hole. Okay, here on the top you can see that we have a earphone plug, and then we also have a small inlet that lets us into the back of the phone to be able to upgrade its memory with a micro SD card. You can see here that we also have a power button on the top with the HTC. We have an inlet pull area where we can pull off the top part. We'll show you that here in a second. Another microphone hole, if you will. We also have the microphone hole over here on the Samsung Galaxy S3. And then we have an earphone jack to take and plug into. You can see here these guys are relatively about the same size when it comes to thickness. Okay, so down the right side, pretty much have a nice sleek area here for the Samsung Galaxy S3. We have a small power button, and then on the HTC we have a rocker switch that's very nice for the One S. And it has a really great body design to it. One thing I do like about the rocker switch on the One S, it's much more stable and usable than the One X. The One X is a huge plastic button that's very large and it's easy to press. This one is 100%, if not 1,000% better, and I really enjoy it on this phone. Going down the left side, we have a small volume up and down rocker button on the Samsung Galaxy S3, and on the One S we have the charger, of course, plug for the HTC One. I like both features of having the rocker button on the left or right side. For me, I do prefer the way the Samsung's set up, but it really depends on your preference of style. Whether you're right-handed or left-handed also does make a difference, but I found that I actually prefer and press the volume button a lot less with the Samsung Galaxy S3. But both phones have great volume controls when it comes down to it. Now both phones have a beautiful, sleek, elegantly styled back. The S3 has a has a little camera here you can see, and the speaker is located right here, fairly small. Looks like we've got a little smudging on the back here. And then you also have your flash. The camera is elevated a little bit. One concern I have about it is the camera is elevated to a point where it's very flat with the unit. And there's a real concern there, unless you get a cover for this very quickly, that you're going to scratch this camera lens. So make sure and get a camera or a cover protector if you would for that. Now you can see here they've got the logo that comes down. From what you can do here with the the Samsung Galaxy S3 is the back easily pops off. You can see it here. And you do have a removable battery situation. So if you want to replace the battery, switch them out, you can do the same there. Now you also have the place for your micro SD card here, where you can plug that in. You can also have, of course, a place for your SIM card. So that's what we have on the back here. Now with the back of the HTC S, you're looking at the camera. You have a flash area here. Pretty much just a curved back that gives you an ergonomic hold. You have the Beats audio icon here, you can see, and then our speaker is located right here. Which is a great place to have the speaker on the bottom of the phone. It gets less muffled, and since it's curved up, it tends to bounce against the desk or flat surface and be able to give you sound fairly well. So, the one thing I do like about the HTC is it has a lot of protection for the camera eye. It raises up. In fact, with the HTC One X, I'm really concerned about getting the camera scratched. Where the nice thing is, with the HTC One S, there's much more protection for the camera eye there. Now, of course, this has a pull-out area here. Let's yank that off. You can see here, this is just an area to be able to put the SIM card in. It does pop off otherwise, and there you go. You can see the backs of these and how they operate. Now, they are both lightweight. They tend to hold up to drops fairly well. I mean, as well as can be expected. But because they're both kind of light body plastic cases, they tend to hold up to drops. I've never dropped either on their face, but both are fairly light enough, and being as the plastic molding that's used on them, they tend to handle drops fairly well. Let's take a look at both the products and how they work. Now, of course, you have the Android format here, where you have the ability to customize by adding widgets and all that great stuff. The one thing about the T-Mobile HTC One S is the HTC Ones have been coming out with a 4.04 Android update, and when they do, it's changing this back button that you see here, or I'm sorry, it's changing this recent apps button into a menu button. What they've done with HTC Sense is they built in menus to all this to accommodate only having 3 buttons across the bottom without a menu button. So the HTC updates that are coming out with 4.04 are coming out where you can change this to be a menu button, or you can change it to press once for menu, press twice, hold, all those sort of different things. You can keep the recent app opening thing if you want, but it gives you total adjustment and customization there. Now, we do not know if the One S will be coming out with the Android 4.04, but if it does, it'll be definitely really cool addition. You can see here that the S has the recent apps button, of course, and it will pull up the recent apps that we may have had up. You have the home button, of course, and you have a back button. With the Samsung Galaxy S3, you have a push button for the home button. You also have a thing that comes up for back, and then you also have a pop-up menu thing that you can take and do. I tend to like the flat surface better, where I don't have to physically press a button or find a button. But that's pretty much a function of choice. So let's take a look at what we have with the S3. We have a swiping screen going from left to right, of course, and it is an infinite screen where it can continue to scroll all over the place as you go back and forth between all the different screens you can have. With the HTC One, you're looking at a finite scroll where you can only go back a certain way one way and forward a certain way the other way. You, of course, can customize all your widgets and everything and all that good stuff, but you can see the real difference there in whether or not you have an infinite swipe or a finite swipe. So you can see that there. Let's get into some of the notifications here. Now, once again, this is Android 4.04, and we're dealing with Android 4.03 here. There's some difference, of course, in the proprietary software that's put on each phone. One thing I do like about this Samsung is they have a very quick menu they've installed where you can click on some of the most popular items that you may want to activate or deactivate. One thing I do really like on the Samsung is it does have a feature where if you want to save power, once the phone goes into standby mode, it will turn off its Wi-Fi access, which is really nice and saves you a lot of power and juice. I actually have this setting turned on here to where as soon as you pull it out of standby mode, it will reactivate its connection to the Wi-Fi that you're using. This is a very handy menu thing that comes into play, and I really do like the ability to hit on the fly. You can see here it's got a really nice menu and everything, and of course you can easily get into your settings menu by hitting the gear. Same thing here with the 1S. You can get into your settings menu fairly easily. You can see some of the differences. Both have beautiful graphical interfaces between the two. It just depends upon which one you like the best, which one you like the most, if you will. Let's take a look at the About here and the software so that you can take a look at the differences in what we're using. You can see here that we're using the Android 4.0 version, and of course this is with the S, we're looking at the 4.0 Sense version, the 4.03 Android version. So let's come out of there. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at some other different things you can do with the phones. We're going to take and see what we can't do. Okay, so here we are. We're comparing the front-facing camera on Skype. Now this is over a localized Wi-Fi network. So you can see here, there's not much difference in quality. I can tell you a little bit, but not that much. The T-Mobile service performed really well at being able to broadcast and receive data and all that good stuff. Let's see how it looks on the Samsung Galaxy. Okay, so here you can get a good idea as to how well the camera works on the front-facing camera through Skype on the T-Mobile Htc One S. You can see how it feeds across. Now, in this case, we are using the T-Mobile service to be able to broadcast and download these images through the One S, and of course we're using the local Wi-Fi on this end. But this gives you an idea as to how well the service works and how well the front camera works and the processor broadcasting and receiving the images. Okay, so now here you can see our experience over a localized Wi-Fi, and of course results may vary. We've got some sound cycling that we're experiencing, so you can see how that plays out on the Samsung Galaxy S3. We've been doing a number of recordings, so there's probably a little bit backed up in the two of them, but you can see I'm coming out really well on this end. We're just having a little problems with the receiving end, which may be coming from the iPad 3. So you can see here it looks really well on what's being sent on this end. Okay, so now we have the front-facing camera experience that you can see here. This is through the AT&T network for the 4G that you'll see this over. So you can kind of see the results we have here are very good. Now there are some differences in the phone that we can't really compare side by side, but one of the things that the T-Mobile has is as soon as you play music and you put an earphone in, the Beats audio will activate. You can of course see the Beats audio logo on the back, and what it will do is bring up a little red Beats audio logo that will enhance the quality of your sound. I actually really enjoy the Beats audio enhancement that comes with the HTC One phones, and feel it's pretty good. If you have, of course, Beats products, Beats audio products, if you will, the headphones, earphones, all that good stuff, you can enjoy that experience probably a whole lot richer. But it does make a great sound enhancement of the phone. Of course, the Samsung Galaxy S3 does not have Beats audio enhancement and all that good stuff. It does, however, on the other hand, have a lot of customization you can take and do and have a form of something that's very similar to Siri on the Apple iPhone. So let's take a look at how that works. Now, one thing that's very cool about the S3 is it has something called S-Voice. And with S-Voice, you can see it here. You can pull it out, and it works much like Siri, if you will, at being able to determine what you want to take and do and how you want to do it. What's really cool, too, is you can take and pull, you can make a wake-up command to take and pull your S3 not only out of standby, but you can indicate that you want it to do other things. Wake up. Wake up. So as you can see here, I've given it the wake up command, and now it's listening to me to determine what I want to take and do. You can launch apps from this. Launch Skype app. So you can see here, you can launch apps from it. You can check my email. Whoops. Check my email.
Let me do an internet search for an answer to check my email.
You can, of course, control whether the voice is activated or not and all that good stuff. But you can kind of get an idea how this works. Now, the S voice is fairly good. I like it. There's actually a video we did comparing it to the iPhone Siri video, and I've never been that impressed with Siri and her ability to hear me and understand me. It is cool to have a video option, or I'm sorry, an audio option that will pull you out of standby, and also to be able to give commands to the phone. Open my Gmail app.
Opening Mail.
There we go. So you can kind of see how this works and all that good stuff. It's pretty freaking cool in what it will take and give you. And being able to pull out a standby is really nice. There's also S Suggest that's on the Samsung. I don't think it's all that great. It much works like Apple's Genius, where it's supposed to suggest different apps that you should use based upon the ones you're currently using. Okay, now of course one of the other things you can do is, just like with Siri, you can easily open up S Voice from your thing just by double clicking on the home button. And as you can see, that will take us right into the S Voice program so that we can be able to utilize that. So this feature isn't available on the HTC One S. It's definitely a very different feature, and it's very nice to have. I actually really like S Voice and love utilizing it. It's great to wake up out of standby, and it's great to give commands as to what you want to take and do with it. One feature that's not available on the S. Okay, so if you'll notice here, what we're doing is we're comparing using speedtest.net. Now, yes, we do have the Wi-Fi on. We're, of course, using the log results here. So we turned off the Wi-Fi, ran the speed tests, and these are some of the logs that we've kept. So you can see here we ran 5 tests on each devices. Now, we really don't want to compare AT&T versus T-Mobile here. We're just looking at a phone comparison and how well they performed against each other. So you can take whatever results you want from this. And, of course, the reason we do these benchmarking tests is so that you alone can follow along at home and be able to use those same benchmarks on your phone to decide which phone might be best for you. So we'll leave that up to you to decide. You can see both phones perform very well at downloading and upload and processing data. Alright, so here are some scores using the AnTuTu benchmark 2.9.2. You can get this on the Android store. You can actually see how well these two phones scored using their benchmarking service and testing and everything else. You can see pretty much everything and how it broke down, what their scores were. It was interesting that the T-Mobile actually scored better than the Samsung. So let's take a look at some more benchmarks. Okay, so let's take a look at the scores, and you can see here the One S is edging out the Samsung Galaxy in its scores. And there's several different scores that we use here: integer, floating point, memory, and of course stream. Now, given this has an upgradable memory to it, the One S, of course, has all its memory built in. You can see here that it definitely is outperforming in a lot of different ways. And floating point, it was about the same. But we'll go ahead and compare these. Not much of a difference between these two phones, but keep in mind, of course, there's much more to work with the screen on the Samsung. You can sit here and compare some of the notes as you follow along. Probably with your own phone, you can see here the integer performance, etc., between these two phones. And of course, we use these as a great way for you at home to compare your phones with the phones that you are seeing here, and you can decide which one is the best for you. All of them, of course, have different features and different variant ways they operate, sizes, and all that good stuff. So it's really up to you in the end. So there's their Geekbench 2 scores. Okay, so here we can see some of the benchmarking numbers between the two devices. You can see here the One rates just below the One X. Now, we have noticed that some of the variants of these different benchmarks have been determined by what OS system is running on the devices. For instance, with our HTC One X, we noticed that it ran better and we got better results once we improved from the Android 4.0 to Android 4.04. And we noticed that we jumped ahead. So some of these numbers aren't quite set in stone. You can see here that the device for the Samsung S3 got a rating of 5,047 and outperformed the S, which got a rating of 4,501. You can see some of the other rankings there. This is our GPS test. We're testing the ability of both phones to tie into GPS satellites, be able to find them, be able to know the distance and accuracy in feet. You can see each of them are very similar in what they're able to grab. They're grabbing plenty in view, plenty in use. They're within 10 feet of each other. You can see some of the globe figures. Does seem like they're getting a stronger signal on the S3, but you can see here they hold up pretty comparable in GPS testing. Okay, so looking at our benchmark, a GL benchmark 2.1.5, we're using the Egypt benchmarking here for displays. You can see here that the S processed 6,555 frames at 57 frames per second, very fast speed. Now, given it's a much smaller screen, so it has less work to do. In the Samsung S3, we're looking at 5425 frames at 48 frames per second. So you can see there a little bit different speed going on with the S, but it has a smaller screen it has to deal with. Okay, so here you can see our native and Java tests that we've taken run for Threads. You can see here that the S3 performed with 4306 native benchmarks for the the and E mark, and in Java performed 175. The one performed actually better, 5548 with the 188 Java rating. All right, so you can see here in billion counter, the 1S was actually able to count to a billion much faster, 21.56 seconds, as opposed to the Samsung Galaxy S3, 34.53. Okay, so now let's take a look. These are the passmark performance tests for mobile phones. You can take and get this on Android. You can see here that the one actually scored just a smidgen higher, and you can see some of the difference in information that we pull here. And that's an overall system rating, of course. What you're looking at now is, let's pull down to the CPU test. You can see the CPU actually outperformed on the 1S, and on disk tests, looks like the S3 outperformed it by a smidgen. You can see some of the details here as we pull those up. You can see in the memory tests, the memory outperformed in the T-Mobile 1S. Now keep in mind you can expand the memory in the Samsung Galaxy S3, so there is that feature available to you. In the 2D graphic tests, you can see here that the 1S once again outperformed it, and but in the 3D graphic tests, you can see here that the S3 actually outperformed the 1S. So, kind of a mixed bag when it comes down to it, and which phone you really prefer. Both phones are great phones that I really like, of course. Okay, so let's take a look at the camera, because the camera is definitely a feature for the things you want to take and compare here. Now, they both have really good cameras in them. You can see here this is a your standard operating Android sort of setup. You've got your ability to adjust your flash up here. You've got your settings area here where you can go into different camera settings, image resolution, video quality resolution. You can take and control image adjustments for controlling exposure and all that good stuff. And let's see. ISO adjustments, white balance, continuous shooting. Now, one thing that they have with the HTC that's really cool with continuous shooting is you can shoot like 20 up to 20 frames. You can decide what you want to shoot. You can also do continuous shooting where you hold down the button and it just keeps on banging out photos. So it's really cool that way with some of the different options that you have. Let's see, you've got auto upload, different things you can take and do. You can, of course, reset default, as you saw the thing came up there. Different camera interfaces that you can take and do. Pretty much a whole lot of different good stuff when it comes to adjusting your settings in there. You've got different scenario or scene settings you can take and set up. You've got auto HDR, panorama, portrait, group portrait, landscape, whiteboard, close-up, all that good stuff. Now over here, you can also see that you have this opaque thing. Once you click on it, there's different effects that you can add on. Once you click the effect, you can see the effect coming through the camera screen to you. So you have those things that you can take and do to affect your shots. You can also see you have a zoom in and out button to be able to slide for your zoom. You have your shutter button here, you have your video camera button here, and of course when you want to check what's in your shooting portfolio, you can take and see it here, and of course you can make different adjustments to trim, edit, all that sort of good stuff. Let's go ahead and kill off some of these. Now, here's some of the photos that we take with the HTC One. It does bring out the yellow, blues, and greens a little bit higher than what you normally find with other phones. We found that the HTC Ones were doing this where they were jacking up the yellow, blues, and greens, and you were getting much more of that. To give you an example, the color of my floor is much more darker than this, and what we found is with the HT1 line, they were jacking up the yellows, blues, and greens. You can see here more of a truer color in the picture format. This is a picture of the floor, but you can also see the green pops. There's a lot more yellow in the floor than it normally looks. But it does take great pictures. The yellow, blue, green thing is something we've just kind of noticed. What it does is by amping up the yellow, blues, and greens, it gives their photos more brightness, which works for some formats unless you get in a yellow, blue, green environment. Then it kind of overloads the system. But this is Android, so you can customize and control all these different areas and be able to adjust them the way you want. With the this is a low light video situation where we're using the back flash. You can see here that we got pretty good pictures out of it. The colors still pop. You can see the details. This is in a dark and low light environment, so we did very well. We were very impressed with the way the light lit up the background and everything else, and we were able to get stuff. Let's take a look at a low light shot. Now, a low light shot came out really, really well with the flash. Very impressive that you can see the colors still pop. You can see the details on the photo, and it worked great as a low light camera. Overall, it's a great camera to take and use. Highly recommend it. So I would definitely be interested in the phone from this basis as a camera phone. Very good photography ability with the HTC One, and we've seen that throughout the whole line. Okay, so let's take the camera function of the S3. Now, we've been impressed with both cameras. They're both wonderful cameras, wonderful phones, so you really can't say anything bad about either one of them. Let's take a look at the different menus, just a little bit different. You have some autofocus, macro, face detection. You can control, of course, your flash. You've got some different things to control, actually, the scheme or shooting mode. You can, of course, do this with the 1S also. You can control the front and back of the camera here. You also have the settings where you can go in and make different adjustments to how well it shoots, exposure, all that sort of good stuff. Effects, white balance, metering, anti-shake, image quality, GPS tag, all that sort of good stuff. So you have the ability to do much of the same adjustment that you want to take and do. Effects-wise, of course, you can see here you can add some effects to it if you want. You also have the ability to have the same scene mode that you saw on the 1S, where you can set up different things, a little bit more in different features you can take and do that you can do with the 1S. But for the most part, I just shoot straight out with the camera. Now let's take a look at the pictures and what we're going to get from them and what the difference is going to be. In fact, let's actually go back because I want to discuss one other thing with you. You actually have a button here to flip between photo mode and video mode. So you do have that button, and of course you do have your button here to control all that data here for turning it both on and off. One thing we've noticed though is the first time that you do use the camera, if you haven't used it for a while and you click to go to the photos you do, there is a bit of a delay. In this case, we've already gone through that delay as you saw previous. This is a low light photo that you can see where we did a low light photo shot with the Galaxy S3. So this is using the flash and all that good stuff, and let's see if we can't compare that just really quickly here with the 1S, so you can see the difference between the two photos and how they take and play out. Let's see if I can't pull that up for you here, and see if we can't do that on the fly. You can see here we've got the photo here, and then we've got the photo here that we're dealing with. You can see the photos a little bit much better on the S3. Let's go ahead and take a look at the photo where we're taking a picture of the floor. You can see here that the S3 has a much closer picture color to the floor. In fact, it's almost accurate. You can see what I'm talking about, where there's lots of yellows with the 1S. Video-wise, let's go ahead and take a look at that. If we can pull those up, and we'll go ahead and play both videos for you. Now, it's interesting to me that the GS or the S3 also takes and kind of changes the color. It's not quite the same as accurate in video as it is in picture, which is kind of interesting. You can see the details here. The S3 is much better a camera than the 1S as far as I'm concerned. Let's go ahead and flip to a screen where we can see low light video, and we'll compare the two side by side. Once again here, I believe that the quality of the picture and image is much better with the S3. So you can see that there in the differences between the two. So they're both great cameras. There's not much you can say bad about either one. I like both of them. I do believe the S3 is probably a better camera, so I'd probably go with that from a camera aspect. So let's round up. Overall, I love both phones. I've been impressed with both phones. They both work extremely well. I actually love the HTC One S over the HTC One X, which actually has a little bit wider screen and more screen to it, but I've actually liked the feel, I like the steel build of it, and I've enjoyed my experience with it much more than the One X, although both are really good phones, and I can't say bad about either of them, but I am more comfortable with the One S, its speed and its operation, and I like it thinner in the hand. Now, if you were asking me which two phones I like better, I do like the Samsung Galaxy 3. You can find the Samsung Galaxy 3 also through T-Mobile, so if you want to get it through them, you can. The features that we talked about when it comes to memory and some other elements, I'm not sure exactly what they would be. You may want to check and see if they're different with T-Mobile. But the Samsung Galaxy S3 is a very nice phone no matter who you get it through. So you can check out either one and find which one works for you. I tend to like the bigger screen. Some people might not like that as much. So be sure to check them out. Thanks for AT&T for providing the Galaxy Samsung S3 to us, and thanks to T-Mobile for providing us the HTC One S. Be sure to check out which one's right for you, and we hope that we helped you out with this experiment. Chris Voss tested, Chris Voss approved. Be sure to check back off in the chrisvossshow.com. Thank you.